Yeah. I think leadership is one of those things that you do have to grow incrementally. I'm realizing this when I talk to people right now who are, maybe they're leading a team of 10 people and they're telling me like, yes, how do I get to leading a team of, 70? And it's like, well, you lead a team of 30 first. That's the short answer.
Mm.
It's like there is an incrementalism to it. And there's it's not to say that that person couldn't skip that step, but there'll be so many candidates that you're in competition with, who will have not skipped the step. And it also doesn't mean that you have to your life has to be like divided in 2 or 3 year increments. You can move through them fast, but you
Wow.
probably need to plan on moving through them sequentially.
Welcome. I'm your host, Karan Mehta. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Jonah McIntire, a leader in digital transformation and logistics innovation. With deep expertise in technology, supply chain, and data driven decision making, Jonah has helped global enterprises rethink how they operate and scale. I'm excited to explore his journey and hear his vision for how technology will continue to shape the future of business and the logistic industry in particular. Jonah, welcome.
Should be on.
I'm thrilled to have you. Been looking forward for this conversation. I know you've been on probably most of the time on the plane, so really appreciate you taking a few minutes and spending the time and giving your insights.
No worries. Really, really happy to be spending the time with you. So let's get in.
Awesome. So I thought, you know what? Why don't we begin with just sharing a bit about your current role at Trimble?
Yeah. So I lead the product and engineering organization. I'm like a chief product and technology officer for one of their three segments, their transportation logistics segment. It's primarily businesses that are in transportation. It also includes forestry. Forestry is a division of Trimble that's doing well. It's kind of growing business and it's pretty logistics heavy. So if you think about the controllable costs and what you're really trying to orchestrate in forestry, a lot of it is synonymous with logistics. So I lead that area. If you were to look at that part of the business in isolation, it's about 500, 550 million in annual revenue. It would be the seventh largest supply chain software company in the world. If it were standalone, it's got operations in Europe, North America, and then also some in Asia and South Oceania and South America, but primarily North America and Europe. And it includes includes some businesses that are very iconic. In Europe, it includes the Transporian business. In North America, it includes businesses like TMW Suite or PC Myler, or Copilot, which are kind of known by their name in the industry.
Wonderful. No, thanks for that introduction. So, Jonah, I got to ask, just building upon this, right? You got a diverse career, almost 15 years in logistics and digital transformation. And just curious, what drew you to this field?
Yeah. So when I was doing my master's degree, I was focused in kind of retail as a vertical. And what I was realizing was that most retail revolutions, they really are fundamentally a logistics innovation that then gets applied to retail. So if you think about, first there was a rise of kind of wholesale style businesses. So these would be companies that would kind of create an edge by getting large volumes of goods into a store and offering them therefore at a lower price. There were precursors of this, but I think Walmart really honed in on it in North America. You kind of really got an edge with Walmart. Around the same time, actually, they were taking over from department stores, which were themselves a format of this, of large stores that could compete because of superior logistics, could compete with these small kind of boutique Main Street type stores. That typically department store would be a little bit away from Main Street, had ample parking, and brought a tremendous amount of variety of goods, and therefore brought a tremendous amount of variety of shoppers to the same location. Then you skip forward a little bit in the 2000s when I was finishing my master's degree. The focus was all on the competition between kind of emerging e-commerce and these specialty stores. So you'd go to a shopping mall and you'd see these very specific specialty stores, and you'd also so like think Gap maybe, and then you would simultaneously there was this emergence of e-commerce. And then a few years later, as I was then out in industry and working, it was all about first multi-channel, then omni-channel in retail. Later, there's been, 2-day delivery, same-day delivery became a thing through the infinite shelf of Amazon. And then finally, there was the hacking the de minimis rule to be able to sell things from like Shein or similar websites where you would be able to ship something from China to the US and it would just appear like magically cheap, but that's because you're kind of hacking this de minimis rule for getting away with shipping things into the US without paying tariffs or duties. And so in each of these cases, what you really had was a logistics innovation that enabled a emergent retail business. And when I was doing my master's degree, I just became more and more fascinated with supply chain management and this ability to use the supply chain as a competitive differentiator, not an operational aspect, but really like strategically. And so that's where the orientation came. And then as I began working in it, I found that while all these things are interesting, the material handling, material management aspects of supply chain are kind of it's important. It's why it's the center of it. It's really technology that's changing that space the most. So if you were looking for an engine that's setting the pace of change in supply chain management, it's mostly technology, as opposed to say, human resources or regulatory changes or something. And so I ended up really quickly almost immediately focusing on supply within retail, is focusing on supply chain management and then technology for supply chain management. And then my eventual career headed more towards technology and less and less towards first retail and then supply chain.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Thanks for indulging there. So my follow up will be from there. Obviously, seems like that keen interest resulted into founding, I believe, TNX Logistics.
Hmm.
From there, leading the product organization at Transporeon, and now, as you mentioned earlier, serving as the chief product technology officer at Trimble. So, share with me some of the pivotal moments, like which have really defined your sort of career trajectory.
Yeah, I kind of had several. So coming right out of my master's degree program. I started working at a retailer called a Build-A-Bear Workshop, and I had the good luck of being able to accumulate a scope of responsibility very quickly there. And this was luck because it really came down to the logistics department when I came into it. Very rapidly lost most of its staff for various reasons. I was at the time, what was it? It's like 20, 25, maybe 24. And I was just, every time there was an opportunity to, I was like, hey, I can work harder and take over this role. And I tried to frame it each time as like, we can just call this interim. And if I'm not sort of making it, then you hire somebody and it's no one bats an eye at that. And if I am doing a good job, then we make that interim become permanent. And I just sort of move forward. And that allowed me to get to pretty significant levels of responsibility pretty quickly. I think within 18 months, I was responsible for most of the logistics spend and key decisions that were going on there. I also had like a very accommodating direct, director above me who had been originally over the planning and purchasing, kind of procurement and purchasing areas. And he didn't really have a background in logistics. And he also saw that I had high enthusiasm and he had maybe a full-time job already and didn't really have that much enthusiasm. And as I was facilitating his goals, he was happy to let me do my thing. My time at Build-A-Bear just gave me a lot of opportunity to kind of grow into a role where I was responsible for end results and had a lot of touch points around the company, different departments, and also third-party vendors. Then I switched over to being at Manhattan Associates, and I helped them launch business units in Asia, so Japan, China, and Singapore, and a little bit into Malaysia. That was my first foray into like being at a software company, a company that that's their core business. They of course serve supply chain management, but they're really, in the end, their job is to make and sell software, not to operate a supply chain. And it was interesting. On one hand, you kind of, coming from my background, I had the sort of the superpower of, well, I'd actually run a supply chain, so I knew what that felt like. I had like legitimacy when I. On the other hand, everything else was new. I mean, what did I know about Japan and China and Singapore, and right, like those are new to me. A software business was new to me, so those were pretty unique. Then I went to Panalpina and I helped them at their headquarters in Switzerland, and I helped them create technology for their sort of top tier of customers. Companies like that at the time, I think it was the fourth largest logistics provider in the world by revenue, and they wanted to, a company like that, you're the top tier client. They're really significant anchors to the business, and
Hmm.
they'll offer them technology as a kind of a perk of being a customer, and
Yeah.
also stickiness to keep them as a customer. And that was an interesting experience because the little, the little I had picked up when I was at Manhattan Associates, then I got to go see what, not a shipper, not the software company, but like a logistics provider, how they
Hmm.
approach technology. So this was like the third side of the fence in this triangle. And again, my superpower was that, yeah, I could speak authoritatively of how the shippers view the situations. And
Yeah.
also, I knew what a good software company looks like. And this was like a tiny software company inside of a logistics provider that was not, frankly, run that well. And so then, to kind of speed up here a little bit, then I left Panalpina and I started my first company. It's a company called Clear Abacus. And it was really identifying at the forefront, sort of early identification of what was possible with cloud computing for
Wow.
our space. This was in the 2012 range. I was looking at the situation going, okay, well, you can rent a server for 90 cents an hour from AWS, but it was pretty bare bones. I mean, you could do
Yeah.
stuff with it, but didn't you had to kind of control it entirely yourself. There wasn't a lot of infrastructure around that. It was just you're just getting a server, or you're
Yeah.
getting memory if there's some other options. But and me together, with my co-founder, we're brainstorming out, well, what could you actually do with that? And we came up with there's in our space, there's these hardcore optimization problems that are very compute intensive. And the way in the old days, when you had a server in your data center, you had to kind of, if you think about it in the stack, at the top of the stack, you have this software layer. The software layer, because it's going to run very compute intensive, it has to know what's below it in the hardware layer. And you have to design algorithms that are kind of within the bounds of that hardware. So
Really.
if you could only run this thing for 6 hours max,
Yeah.
because that's about the operational timeline that people would give it, and it's got 6 cores and 5 gigabytes of RAM, then kind of you had to design algorithms that worked within that.
Really.
Well, we got to think about it, and we were like, well, in this new world, you could just spin up like 100 servers, and as long
Yeah.
as you use algorithms that are parallelizable, it doesn't really matter if 99 of them are wasted, like their results are not that great. But if one of them has like a breakthrough result and it's much better, then you just use that one.
Yeah.
And so we ended up creating software to do this, and really quickly got the attention of a company which at the time um, was kind of in with our first customer, which was Pfizer. So we got the attention of GT Nexus, and they really, within a year of us starting the company, they made an acquisition offer to bring us into GT Nexus. So then
Nice.
became part of GT Nexus as part of their sales leadership. Eventually, we sold GT Nexus to Infor, which at the time was one of the larger acquisitions in our space. And then I decided to leave Infor after that. I decided to leave Infor to go again, try to start a new company. I started this company called TNX. It was focused on applied AI for negotiating spot contracts,
Wow.
transportation contracts.
Yeah.
This was in 2016, and 2016 to 2021, I built that company up. And first, we started in New Zealand, a little idiosyncratically, then expanded to Europe, then to Russia, then to the US and Central America. Today, this is like is on track to handle about $1 billion of spot. This line of business does
Amazing.
automated negotiations for tracking to $1 billion in spot procurement, and it was acquired in 2021 by Transporian. I
Hmm.
joined Transporian at first just kind of like a lowly leader of one team, and then my role expanded. I got promoted several times, and eventually I was leading product and engineering for Transporian. And then recently I was promoted to lead product and engineering for all of the transportation segment of Trimble after we sold Transporian to Trimble for about $2 billion. And that was, at that time, that's like top three, I think, acquisitions in our space by size. So I've had the good luck of being on multiple sides of the industry of this supply chain management space. I've been an operator, I've been a service provider, and I've been a technologist. I've started two companies, both of which identified a emerging technology trend. In the
Love
first
it.
case, the arrival of cloud computing, and in the second case, the arrival of applied AI. In this case, we're talking about statistical AI, so sort of what people would call like data science or machine learning, right? And then now I've got the good fortune of leading, my organization's nearly 1,300 people underneath me. And I've got the good fortune of leading a 1,300 person organization at the arrival of generative AI. And I'm like laser focused on making the most of that opportunity.
Incredible journey. I appreciate you kind of walking us through that. I have to say, obviously, it's the growth mindset and the challenges, and most importantly, looking at what the pain points are. So that's, I think, has served well. I do remember, and funny you just mentioned generative AI. I do remember very vividly that the first time I met you, two things stood out in our very first conversation. You were focused on your customer, like what exactly the customers are trying to do. I mean, that was very evident how you were operating and how you had your teams operating. And one of the key things in that conversation was you kind of highlighted that how slim the margins are and how you want to make sure that customers were utilizing your services, running successful business. And then in all that, you did highlight it, AI ML. So my question then will be, how do you see it like transforming now, given you have been on the front seat through these, the journey you just shared with us, the logistic landscape, and what role really does it play on that operational efficiency, which has been your core focus throughout these years?
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting. If you think about the logistics, start with logistics providers. So this is like the large trucking companies or the large freight forwarding companies that people use to move their goods around. You think about those businesses, they are, for all intents and purposes, they're like a software company wedded to a very physical business. The physical business is obvious. They move materials, they handle materials. Their core role in our economy is to lift something safely, right, from one location to another within the timelines that they agreed to. And everything is lifted this way. Like the physical economy, we think about transportation, it underpins the entire physical economy. But basically, nothing in this world sort of starts and ends its physical life in the same place. It's going to get moved somehow, right? So that's why transportation is well over 10% of GDP. It's more than like education. It's more than healthcare. Like it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it's not sexy, and it's not meant to be sexy. Like when it works really well, it's a bit like clean drinking water. You go in any
Yeah.
building, kind of in the modern world, you go into any building, you turn on the tap, and you got clean drinking water. That's a miracle. Like that would have been a miracle to
Yeah.
people, right, in the past. But we don't think about it because it's just ubiquitous and cheap and it works. And that's
Mhm.
that's how logistics should be, right? But the back office part of logistics is the planning, coordination, reconciliation
Mhm.
of all those physical moves.
Yes.
That's like a pure information world. That for all intents and purposes, that is like a software company in the back end because everything that you do is mediated through this screen, right? This like it's
Yeah.
all digital, it's all electronic. And that part, robotics someday will help the physical. There'll be a similar revolution in material management
Movement.
as robotics comes on. But right now, like as in mid 2025, the amazing thing that's happening is this back office revolution that's related to generative AI. And that's because generative AI is very much like thinking in a box. It's like if you think about how people in the back office of logistics operations, they don't need to do anything physically. Their hands, their eyes, they're just there to interact with the screen. So they're just there to interact with the digital objects that
Hmm.
they're dealing with. And therefore, what the reason we hire those people, we have them in the back office is for their thinking, is for their mind. And generative AI is giving us that in this alternative format. You kind of pay per thought instead of paying a fixed fee per month for somebody who comes and works a certain number of hours. And it's worse at some things, but it's better at a lot of things.
Hmm.
So it's like a infinitely duplicatable, very eager, 23-year-old. They can kind of do everything a 23-year-old could do in their first week of work. They might screw up sometimes, just like 23-year-olds can, and you need to supervise them.
Yeah.
But if you kind of take that in context,
Yeah.
you think like if you think about if you could hire a 23-year-old and you only have to pay them exactly for the unit of work they do. So if you say like, "Hey, look through our inbox, and if there's anything
Morning.
that's being escalated, like come and tell me," and it's like, okay, that's going to cost you 12 cents. You say,
Yeah.
okay, do it. And you pay the 12 cents, but then you'll have to pay them for anything else for the rest of the day if that's all you want them to do. So that's the kind of unit economics. And it's just so
Love it.
cheap. It's like 12 cents.
Yeah.
And think about how much effort you ought to put into making that work. It's like for a
Hmm.
business, because I find people kind of look at that and go like, yeah, but it's got limitations. It's like, did you hear me say the 12 cents part? It's right. This is unbelievably good deals if you can
Yeah.
harness it properly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, if I just sort of step back for a second, why is generative AI important? Like logistics, these kind of logistics operations, they've got a physical reality and a digital reality. The digital reality right now is run by people who have to drive 30 minutes in their car, go into an office, look through a screen the whole day, drive back home, right? They're not especially good at this generally. Like this isn't you they weren't evolved to do this. They're not especially good at it. They don't necessarily like the job that much. Thus job satisfaction can be quite
Yeah.
low in this industry.
Yeah.
And AI is much more effective at it, like I mean cost effective and speed effective. And so the potential there is just gigantic. And if you think about
Hmm.
it from a business perspective, like a TAM perspective, total addressable market perspective, for every $1 that's spent on the systems that these people use today,
Hmm.
$12 would be spent on the labor to use the system. So if generative AI is addressing even a small portion of that labor, then it's got a wholly new but equal sized market compared to all of the systems of record we that the industry usually is buying right now.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think you summarized this pretty well. Let me ask you this: given again every industry, there are companies which find themselves at a little disadvantage because they're a bit behind. But I go back to your experience. Given where the junction which we are on and how the technology is sort of moving super, super rapidly fast, what would be your recommendations to some of these companies who are embarking on digital transformation journey? And again, I'm going specifically in logistics, right?
Yeah.
Space. And what would be sort of your recommendations?
Yeah, I think there's tremendous ability to just I don't want to call it hacking, but to glue together incrementally solutions to small problems. So you may have like here would be an example of a hacking together of a solution that you could quite quickly you could say, okay, I'm going to put together a like a voicemail box where my customers or my drivers maybe call in and leave messages, and then I'm going to put something on top of that listens to those messages. Then now we're talking AI. Listens to those messages, identifies what is expected to be done. What are they giving me an update? Are they asking me a question? Whatever, and then cues those into either updates or tasks to be done by a person. If you think about a calling into a voicemail box, sorry, if you're listening to a voicemail box, calling in, listening through maybe 10 messages, I mean, quite slow compared to just having like a task list that keeps being fed. Now, it may
Yeah.
sound small, but if you've got, there's a lot of companies that we work with where, in effect, like getting and dealing with phone calls is the majority of their day. They may have a lot of staff doing this. That's
Yeah.
something you can hack together in a day or two with really very little technical skills. And that'd be an example. I think personal aptitude to like use these tools in our own like personal life tends to lead us into identifying ways that we can use them in our businesses. If you're not using things like Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, if you're not using or Grok, if you're not using these in your personal life to plan like your vacations, plan your home remodeling, to prepare for crucial conversations you might be having with a neighbor who you're having a dispute with, or a family member who you're having a disagreement with. You're not doing those things in your personal life. You're not building like the habit of mind to
Yeah.
use them in your work life. So those would be concrete things I expect to do.
Yeah. No, I think one of the things which I've seen, and I think that's where you start having these conversations. And you being a leader, I would love to hear your thoughts. Is the ROI? I think you gave a pretty solid example. Still a big question, especially at the leadership level. Hey, what is the ROI, or is there any ROI? So I'm just curious, given your position running a large organization, large team, what has your approach been, right? Is it like, are you accounting for some soft benefits? Hey, you could put people into something doing more creative versus something mundane and repetitive. So just curious, what approach have you taken internally within
Yeah.
your organization to kind of prove out to your board, from the ROI perspective?
Yeah. So I've maybe contrarian views on this, but I feel like the ROI discussion that I had in the past around, because some of the like the company I started, for example, TNX, it'll reliably generate about 12% savings, somewhere in the 7 to 15%, but let's call it 12% as a median for people. 12% is just starting to get into the range of unmistakable signal. You lose 12% of your body weight and you like notice it, right? Your salary or your cost of living goes up by 12%, you notice it.
Yes.
When your cost of your transportation spend goes down by 12%, you notice it. What I find is like below 10%, it's very difficult to separate the vagaries of life from the signal. So when you're talking about like maybe a 5% improvement, like 5% just gets absorbed into the ins and outs of operations, right? So you try to go forward with a business case of 5% savings, 5% revenue lift or something
Hmm.
over a sufficiently large business, and you start getting these challenges of like, well, but that might just be seasonality, or it might be this other thing that we changed at the same time, or whatever, right? The
Hmm.
macro economy could be shifting. Now if I skip ahead to some of the AI initiatives that we're doing in house, they have they have like impacts that are more in like the 50% range. They are just like unassailable, dead obvious differences. It's like it's not like when you used to sort of shop for a car and you'd be like, okay, this one gets 25 miles to the
Miles.
gallon.
Yeah.
Maybe the next one gets like 28, and you would never notice that. That's just something that something like,
Little. Yeah.
yeah, someone's got to publish for you because you never notice. But you'd
Yeah.
notice if it like flew over your house,
Yeah.
like, right? Like that's the kind of, I mean, I'm not kidding. Like some of the stuff we
Yeah.
do when I ask, we've done a lot. I can go into our process, but we did a lot that's focused internally first of like basically transform our own business before we
Mhm.
purport help people transform theirs. Like you can't. We think of this as sort of dog fooding. Like, eat your own
Drink
dog
your own
food.
champagne. That's what I heard. Like, drink your own
Yeah,
champagne. There you go. Got it.
yeah, exactly. Like if you don't if in my opinion, like if you're going to go tell somebody you're going to help them go into the AI age and they're like, great, how did it change your business? And you're like, well, we didn't really use it that much. That's a bad, that's a bad situation. You gotta have uh, you gotta like start with yourself, transform yourself first. So
Mhm.
we've been doing a lot of transforming ourselves, and we look at stuff where people, my teams, they'll make amazing things. And I'm asking like, okay, so how long do you think it would have taken you to make this if you didn't use our AI tooling? And they're like, well, like forever. Examples would be like, they say, well, I don't know how to make this stuff. Like, I know what I wanted. Like I gave it the end goal that I was looking for, but I couldn't make it. So it's not like I could have done it in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks. It's like I would have had to go and study a whole different profession and learn years basically. It's like, so that's why I say it's, once you get to that breakthrough level, it's like, it's not like little digits anymore. It's now you're
Yeah.
talking about completely different. And then I think, so if you think about the leading indicators are like miracles begin happening, like stuff that is just genuinely impossible to have imagined happening without AI suddenly happens. So that
Okay.
might be, in my case, I work at a software company. It might be like we rewrite the entirety of a legacy application over into a modern technical stack without hiring anybody or taking it offline or doing anything, right?
Mm,
We have, or we release something that like our customers used to. Well, like a real example is we have something where when drivers break down or have to stop
right.
and call back and say, "Hey, I need something for my truck." They
Yeah.
used to talk to somebody in the back office who's then using our software. Now they just talk to a voice agent that's talking with them. Be like this conversation, but it's AI. So anyway, so first is you start having miracles. Then I think the second step, which is necessary for businesses and for me to feel comfortable with it, is you start seeing like significant either top or bottom line shifts
Yeah.
in the dog fooding that we're doing internally. The first shift you see is a bottom line one, and that's because our headcount in my area, which is about 1,300 people, like this is in decline. Like just be clear, we are growing, right? Like we're growing faster than the market. We're taking market
Yeah.
share. We're expanding. And in the past, there would have been a more or less linear relationship between revenue growth and headcount. I mean, it's not a 50-50. It's not like so it can be like linear, but like a small
Yeah. Yeah.
gradient, right?
Yeah.
But now we have a break from this traditional unit economics that says, yeah, like actually I expect that, over the next 3-4 years, as a percent of revenue, we're going to drop our R&D costs, our sort of engineering and product costs real substantially. So that's the first thing. And then the second is the again, as a software company, we sell these things, right? So
Yeah.
you got to see the top line growth, and the top line growth is beautifully it's one of the things I love about and starting in entrepreneurship is like the test in the market is so pure. Is like if I take this, I made this product, if I take it out from behind my back and I show it to you, do you want to buy it? Right?
Yeah.
Like if I show it to you and you say like, yeah, I could see how someone would use it. Okay, that's a no, that you didn't want to buy it. Right? If I show it to you
You say, I
and
want
you're
it.
like, wait, is that real? Can I have that? Like, how do you have a waiting list? And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, like it's going to come out next month. And you're like, okay, well, can we schedule a call for when that comes out? Like, can we get? Because I would buy that, right? Like, what,
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
If you had a car that like flew over your house and then touched down in front of your house, and they had like a for sale sign on it, you'd go ask how much it cost. That's what this looks like. If you take these AI products out from on your back and you show them to the customer, they better have that reaction of like, "Hey, how do I get on the wait list for that?" Right? Yeah.
I hope the audience listens to the entire thing. But if nothing else, this is what this is spot on. I think because just in my conversations, there is still a struggle, and I couldn't have asked for a better explanation. And I think that the way you're approaching it, so the phenomenon. So I'll change the gears a bit. One of the things I've seen our interactions and working in some shape or form with your organization is your leadership, right? The journey you kind of highlighted, and those things are possible. That's just my perspective and belief through teams working together. So, just curious, what has your approach been when it comes to building and nurturing those sort of high performance teams, right? And especially in this fast paced world. So, would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I have a pretty idiosyncratic in some ways leadership style. So I I'll describe first my own personal style and how it leads to getting, in my opinion, it leads to getting very excellent sort of the talent density is very high. So it gets very excellent people who are sort of magnetically drawn into the style and form these super powerful like groups going after their missions. And then maybe second, I can talk about how to make that play well in a large, corporate environment. So I'm pretty intense about work. I kind of don't really believe in work life balance if I'm candid. Now I should say this is not a Trimble thing. This is a Jonah thing. But I think I would encourage people to take their careers much more seriously than I think the average advice is. So like let me give you an example of this. Like if you think about all the things you like in your personal life, you like visiting your family, you like your parents, you've got kids, you love your kids, you love your spouse. You might also have some hobbies, like you do some sports or some traveling. A lot of people like cooking, eating good food. People watch movies, watch shows, they like their sports, don't like watching sports, all these things. So you take everything I just described, everything you do in your personal life, and you look at the hours, it's about equal to your work time. Like in a week, you're awake about an equal amount of time at work as you are out of work. And I mean, that includes stuff like taking a shower, you know?
Yeah.
So so I get a little when people are like, yeah, there's a work life balance. It's like, well, there is a balance, but think about it. It's like your entire personal life
Yeah.
equal to your work life. So you probably owe it to yourself to treat that work time not as just trade hours of my life for money. Like have a bigger ambition. I also think that uh, so I think the way I've succeeded at my career has often been set a very big goal. Also, because when you succeed at small things, like the victory just makes you smaller. It's only by taking on things that are like fundamentally failable that it has any value at all to win. It's like I know for me when I succeed at something, I instantly ask myself like, now did you just cheat there? Did you just set yourself up for like a little fake win to feel better? Is this actually like worth anything? Or did you make the world different by this, or did you just like kind of call the shot that was already going to take place and then say it's a victory? So I tend to draw people into this sort of intense view, and the downside is it can come across as a bit demanding or judgmental or moralizing. I'm not. I kind of at odds with this work life balance like type view of do I do see that times have changed, and I appreciate that we're kind of encouraged to express ourselves and be ourselves, but I also want people to like change themselves, like become a better version that they are.
Absolutely.
I want to acknowledge like the completeness of people, but also acknowledge the fact that through sort of like intentionality and diligence, they become a better version of themselves over time. Then like how do you connect that? Like how does that work inside of a large corporate? Because
Exactly.
this is not what I just described. It is not Trimble's culture in general.
Yeah.
And I think that the challenge for leaders is that it's very tempting. It's very easy to fall into this relationship that either disparages the past or the future. So, a lot of times if you've grown up in an organization, which I didn't, I mean, I'm kind of newish to Trimble. If you grew up, you can kind of fall into this like, well, it was great in the past, and now it's just kind of getting flabby and weak, right? Or you can have the reverse. You can sort of paint yourself as like an advocate of the future in conflict with the present or the past, and you're like there is a transformer and you're there to shake things up in the organization, but you don't frankly show enough respect for the past, right? And
Yeah.
so that what's necessary if you're going to have this like intensity and this demandingness of culture is that you have to show sufficient respect for the past. Like you're there because there was a success in the past. Like that's the reason why we get to play in the game today is because somebody did a great job in the past, and many of those people are still in the organization, and they want their leaders to sort of be a thoughtful and respectful guardian of that legacy, right?
Mm.
You need to sort of so you need to like respect the past, bring it through the travails of the present, which is very important to tell people, be able to show people like where to focus in the present. Like not where are we going to be in a year, but like what should you be focused on now,
Moving
like
on.
this week, today, and then to connect that to like a better future. Doesn't have to be better in like a disparaging the past, but just needs to offer. You need to be able to tell people like this is genuinely the place to spend your limited precious life. Like life's going to be really short. Most of the universe was here before you were born. You'll die really fast. Most of the universe will be after you. You got a really short period of time here.
Yeah.
And like, in my
Big thing.
opinion, if you can't convince people, if you can't show people that this is the best place for them to spend that limited quantity of their life, then you kind of lose the right to lead them. So anyway,
Right.
that's how I see it. My personal style is very intense.
Yeah.
I respect people who don't have that intensity. Like that's fine. It's just, and you probably don't want to always be like I'm very intense on the inside in my mind. I'm not kind of never happy with anything, and you probably don't want to be in my mind. But you do want to have people like me on your team. Like that.
Yeah.
That's the gist of it. And so I tend to draw in these kind of people, and then in order for us to play well with like a full organization
Yeah.
of 12,000 people, you have to have this balance of respecting the past, dealing like correctly addressing the present requirements, and then like painting a
Beautiful
hopeful
vision.
future.
Love it. That's gold right there again. I guess set big, hairy, audacious goals and don't run away from it. And
Yeah,
that's sort of, the gist of it. With this, I have to ask a little tough question. You have run so many organizations, teams. Any challenging sort of moments in career, and how did you navigate them? And I'm sure many of our listeners will probably find something they can relate to. But yeah, any big challenges which stands out, and would love to hear how did you navigate. And you don't have to get into the details.
yeah. I mean, I think most of people's challenges amount to the temptation to abandon something that's hard, or at least mine do. Okay, let me not speak for other people, but for me, I default to taking on big challenges, but then that means that I spend the rest. It's like walking out onto a balance, like a tightrope. It's like I get myself out on the tightrope, but then the challenge is the internal war with yourself, where there's some voice in your mind which is always telling you like, you know what? It's like this is too much. This isn't going to work out. Let's just take it easy. Let's find the safe exit here. I think that at least for me, I mean that's that is the biggest challenge. I think that I got a couple, I mean, tips for at least how I handle it. So, I mean, one of them is just a kind of a real intense commitment, as I said earlier. So it's some version of just push unreasonably hard in the harder than other people would, right? Like you're always asking yourself, like, did I do my best? It's not maybe best in the world, but it's my best, right? Like, and a good way to a good rule of thumb, which I actually use with my teams. So like, let's say I've got a team member who's not achieving something.
Hmm.
My first question, the first question's got to be: is it a reasonable? Did they have a reasonable goal to achieve at all? Like, could anybody have done it? Right?
Yeah.
And then if somebody's done it, if somebody could have done it, then which people can kind of do anything. So that's usually a yes. The next question is like, if their life depended on it, could they have accomplished this? Now, this is a really painful question to ask. I ask this myself every time I'm tempted. Let's take it out of career for a second. Like let's say
Yes.
that you want to spend more time with your kid, and you get to the end of the week and you realize, or maybe the end of the week and you're like, I didn't really spend time with my kid. I spent a little bit of time, but I was distracted or something, right? And a question could be like, hey, if your life depended on it, could you have spent more time with your kid? Like, and I mean it in the really literal sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you don't do it, you die, right? Like, you don't get to have any other experiences. You'll never
Yeah.
see anybody again. Everyone loses you. Like, it's
True.
your life literally depends on it.
Yeah.
And for most of the things we take on, the answer just has to be like, yeah, I could have, right?
Yeah.
You don't like hearing it when you're saying it to yourself, but if you're honest, you're like, yeah, yeah, I could have. Like if my life truly depended on it. And then
Okay.
what you're faced with is essentially a motivation or prioritization question of like, okay, so if I could have done it with my life depending on it and I didn't, then that means I didn't like motivate myself, or I didn't make it a priority. And then if you can't, because every once in a while you'd be like, no, there really isn't, there's no chance, right? Like it would have been possible. Then it's like, okay, then you got some sort of skill gap, resource gap, some form of like I have to change
Exactly.
my conditions in which I'm operating in order to in order to approach it. So anyway, that's something that I had many times in my, particularly my second start, my first startup. We got an acquisition offer within a year that was great, and so we especially we were kind of younger and we were
Yeah,
bootstrapping, and it was like, oh my god, we're getting
that is
so
that.
much money, like we're just gonna do it. The second one, that was more of a grind. I mean, that was, we were successful, like it was, particularly the exit was great. We were growing, we expanded, like all those things were good, but it was not
Yeah,
easy. And during that, I had many times where I was like, well, maybe this is a zombie and I'm not,
yeah,
I shouldn't keep pushing on it. I shouldn't convince people to put their lives into it. But I had to like fight that urge to
motivate.
take it easy, right? Yeah.
Love it, love it. So, Jonah, professionals who are like really aspiring to be in leadership roles and logistics and technology, what will be sort of your advice you would offer them, to succeed?
Yeah. I think leadership is one of those things that you do have to grow incrementally.
Hmm.
I'm realizing this when I talk to people right now who are, maybe they're leading a team of 10 people and they're telling me like, yes, how do I get to leading a team of, 70? And it's like, well, you lead a team of 30 first. That's the short answer. It's like there is an incrementalism to it. And there's it's not to say that that person couldn't skip that step, but there'll be so many candidates that you're in competition with, who will have not skipped the step. And it also doesn't mean that you have to your life has to be like divided in 2 or 3 year increments. You can move through them fast, but you probably need to plan on moving through them sequentially. And so if you're already on the leadership track, my suggestion here would be to get yourself into a role that would is either the thing you're leading is growing organically. Like if you're leading a product that's growing, like it's going to grow organically. If you're leading a sales territory that's growing, it will grow organically, and you'll get those opportunities. If you can't do that, then you need to be really thinking through your target. One of the things I do for example, with my people is like, we'll be like, okay, now like 5 years from now, what role do you want to have? And then typically they'll pick some role that has like a very nice title. They'll be like, well, I want to be like SVP of, whatever, SVP of
Yeah,
platform. And it's like, okay, now then we have to do an inventory. It's like, well, why couldn't you get the job now? Like, you want
yeah,
it, like, why couldn't you just go apply? And you typically end up with this inventory of, it's either social proof, like things that they need to be able to say on LinkedIn, on their LinkedIn profile that they did, or they need network. Like you don't the higher in leadership roles you don't get those jobs from people who don't know you. You get those jobs from someone in your network. Someone who can vouch for you is your key to getting that job, right? Or it may be actual like skills that gets less and less important as you move up in leadership. But some of them are real. I mean, if you've never been responsible for running a budget, or
mhm,
if you've never been responsible for an acquisition, running a due diligence on an acquisition, and that's part of the next role, like some point you have to get those skills. And then finally, sometimes it's kind of like I just need to know what the job is. This is more in the earlier stages. People say they want a job, and then you kind of can detect like, well, you don't really know what that job is, do you? And
mm,
so part of it be like, okay, before we try to get you the job, why don't we get you exposure to the job so you have some like real sense of what it is that you're orientating to. Yeah.
bring that shadowing back. That's awesome. Jonah, this has been incredible. I'm sure our listeners will love it. I do appreciate. And as wrap up, I do have to ask AI optimization. So, if you could automate sort of one part of your life, personal life, tomorrow, what that will be and why?
Yeah, I have had a pet peeve recently about email. I know this sounds very banal, but just like bear with me. It's got two aspects to it that I would like to automate. The first is, the more senior my role has gotten, essentially the more people want to send me mail. And there's a fundamental asymmetry to this of like the number of people in the world who may want to talk to me about something, whether it's legitimate or not, kind of grows faster than my free time to read their emails. And, I have an email inbox for a reason. Like people have, I think, a valid expectation, particularly people who are contacting me for real reasons, right?
Yeah.
That I'm going to read their email and I'm going to reply to it. And so I can't just ignore those emails, and yet they grow just out of a total disproportion to my ability to answer them. So that's my like selfish reason. And then the bigger reason is email's a bit like spreadsheets. It's like a very unlikely thing 30 years from now we'll still use email.
Yeah.
Like and if it's going to change at some point, why not now? Right?
Yeah.
So it sounds crazy if you start from the first principle and you just go like, or you started the first statement of like, yeah, I want to reinvent email. People are like, okay, it's such an embedded system. Like, come on, no one's gonna replace email. On the other hand, if you go like, well, what? So like in 2100, we're gonna use email. All right, really? Like, then people go like, well, yeah, eventually it's gonna get replaced. It's like, okay,
We
somewhere
can
along
start
the
now.
line, yeah,
There you go. I love it. Jonah, what a pleasure again. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be having you back on the show again. Cheers.
cool. It was really nice talking.